Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Adventures in Messaging. I'm Emma Stratton. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by Jiong Liu, Director of Product Marketing at Okta. Hey, Jiong.
Hey Emma, how's it going?
Good. It's so fun to have you here today. Really excited to dive in with you. Something that I know a lot of product marketers ask me about is tips, techniques to create great messaging, right? How do you craft messaging? How do you actually write the stuff? How do you make it sound good? A lot of people focus on this, but you actually have an interesting point of view. You actually think that that's not the number one kind of toughest thing that we need to look at. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear this all the time, especially from younger product marketers as well. And, I would put myself into that category when I first started, which is when I was thinking about product messaging or product marketing and messaging, that like final step of really putting pen down to paper and selecting the exact right crafted word to, get your point across. I thought that was the, end all be all of product marketing. And in fact, I actually have found it to be the least important part of the entire process because if that was the only thing we had to do, I mean, there's copywriters that are out
Right.
there, right? Could do that so much better than most of us. But I think what really distinguishes a product marketer and in how they create great messaging is really the front half of the entire process. And that is around really developing deep empathy for your customers. So being able to go out, talk directly to your customers, talk to account executives, sales engineers, product folks in your org, as well as in the industry, and really understanding the lay of the land and understanding, what keeps your customer up at night and all of the different personas and stakeholders from your C-level down to your economic buyer, down to the person that may be in charge of your project on a day-to-day basis. Like really understanding what makes them tick is really, really critical for a product marketer to inform our own view of the space. And then also, I think what's really critical is data synthesis. Because you have all of these different inputs coming in, you're going to have qualitative feedback, you're going to have quantitative data that is coming in. And you really need to take all of that in stride and combine it all. Another thing I say is if we only looked at data, we wouldn't be product marketers because a data scientist can go do
Yeah.
that. Right. So one of the critical skills of product marketing is you're able to take all of this disparate feedback and using what you know about the customer, using that empathy, you can really dial in like how much of this do I want to factor into what is going on in the minds of our prospective customers here and leveraging that to ultimately build your own intuition in this space so that you understand better than anyone what your customer is thinking and what is going to ultimately resonate with them. And once you have that, then you can go through that final step, putting pen to paper and getting, your exquisite words out into a fantastic messaging framework.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you talk about intuition because I think that is absolutely what it is, building intuition and that empathy. And when you have that understanding, when you've got the data, you understand your customer, you've got that empathy, it takes a lot of the fear of the blank page away because you've got a place to start. And like you said, then you can just have fun wordsmithing and finding the right word. So you're right. We should kind of worry more about all the beginning, all that distillation, and then the crafting part will get a lot easier. So since we're talking messaging process, let's talk about something that happens a lot to product marketers, which is maybe an early product launch for a new product. I hear this a lot where you're having to come up with new positioning and messaging for something that's so fresh, so new, hasn't been maybe fully formed or completely understood, or the use cases are still a bit haven't been totally hashed out. It's early. How do you go about creating positioning and messaging for something so new?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we ran into a lot at Okta. So I work on a product line that we call customer identity. It's actually our second product line that we have at Okta, our first one being workforce, which most people know us for. And so we found ourselves constantly in this position of, hey, this is a new market. You know, historically, people did not buy a customer identity solution. They would try to build components of it themselves. And so we found ourselves having to really kind of shape this market with net new messaging, net new positioning. So it was a lot of like greenfield space that we had to work with. I think one of the examples where this really came up was the first time we launched a platform component within Okta. And so what the hardest part of this is, if when I went to 20 different people in Okta, and then I went to 20 different customers and I asked them, what is the platform? I would get a different answer from every single person. And so one of the first things that we realized was, okay, it's actually not enough just to think about the messaging and the positioning for this new capability that we were launching. We had to actually go define what is this fundamental, like foundational layer that is the platform, and making sure that we're actually defining what this is, the value props of that platform, in addition to the capabilities. So this was a really interesting project because of a couple things. Like number one, it was net new. There's a lot of complexity in terms of how messaging nests within each other. But then the other thing that was really interesting about it was we found out a little bit later that we were a bit early on launching this capabilities. We thought it was going to be ready within a matter of months. It's now been years. And so, normally things that you would be able to rely on as a product marketer, right? Having a product manager that can kind of see the end to end, having beta feedback from customers that are actively using it, even little things like fully scoped UI, like designs for what someone would see for this product capability across end to end use cases, we didn't really have. So there wasn't a lot that was there from a product perspective. So ultimately ended up leaning back on that product marketing framework for messaging and that process for really how we were going to actually communicate what these things were to our customers. And so what we ended up doing was we had a ton of conversations with everyone in the organization, a lot of customers in terms of what was their future vision and the types of, characteristics of a platform, things like flexibility, modularity, extensibility, that were really important for them in order to go fulfill their roadmaps. Like getting all of that synthesized into what ultimately would this platform capability do for our customers, and then pairing on some real world use cases that someone would be able to start with right away. And so bringing those two pieces together was ultimately what we ended up deciding on. And we validated that with customers, right? They wanted to hear about the extensibility and the flexibility, and they wanted those real use cases for how they could start while understanding the broader picture, the broader like set of capabilities or possibilities that were opened up for them as well as for their developers in order to get going. And so that's how we really ended up focusing the launch. I would say one other piece that was really critical there is also understanding the personas that are involved, right? A developer and what they need out of a platform does come down to a lot of those capabilities. Whereas if you talk about more of like an economic buyer, they care about platform, but in a different way, right? They don't care about extensibility per se, but it's more about the agility that it enables their business to have on a go forward basis so that as new use cases come to light, they're able to bring those to market quickly.
Awesome. Well, I love how you process. I think the learning here is like stick to your process, you know, stick to your intuition
Mhm.
keep it empathizing and trying to make it easy for your customer to understand and understand the things that they care about. And that will kind of see you through thick and thin, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in those scenarios where you're kind of put in those situations where you have to launch a little early, I mean, ultimately you got to fall back on what you best, and that's the core fundamentals of product marketing.
Absolutely. Trust your gut, right? Trust your gut if that's all you've got to go on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's been super fun chatting with you, Jung. Thank you for sharing your stories and your awesome process for messaging. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.